my inner nerd really loves looking at the new portfolio requirements every year. I just like get a lot out of just noticing the little differences, and yeah, so far I'm a bit disappointed this year because there's really not that much that's new. But also there is some things that are kind of new, or just clarified. So I really enjoy that. But yeah, if anyone has any, I'll share my screen with the portfolio so you can have a look. But if anyone wants to jump in with a question, either audibly or in chat, go for it. I've got both ready.
Garth,
Yeah.
have
Hey,
you got
Danielle.
any clarification about the demo reel?
Sure. Well, what clarification?
I guess just there was some speculation that perhaps it was supposed to be an optional thing because
Oh,
it
it's
hasn't
definitely
appeared.
optional. Yeah.
Oh, because it doesn't say on that one that it's optional. And so I guess there was some speculation as to whether it was supposed to be optional or whether it was not. Yeah, so
I
demo
think
reel.
my
Mhm.
feeling is that this sentence was wrote a little bit speedily and maybe rushed into this before anyone really got to edit it, because it doesn't even it's not even proper English really. But it should say something along the lines of like, if you want to submit a demo reel, that's great. It should be within 1 to 2 minutes. That includes your best animation. That's all. Everything about the personal work is an if, right? None of this, like you have 5 to 7 pieces, do with this what you will. I will say though that on the notion of personal work, we should talk about this because obviously there's this huge new section here, that they've written about the animation, and I think that's great because I there are some critical things here that I want to draw attention to. This first sentence is the biggest one. This is so great that they've clarified this for everyone, because I do find a lot of students really try to like doll up their animation with like beautiful color or two-tone effect, a little background, and basically what they're saying is they don't care. They just want to see good animation. So whether that's, and then a few lines down, if it's rough animation, that's fine. Like we don't need to see just finished animation. We need to see good animation. That's the point. A character performing a task, sure. See, it seems like it. Yeah, this whole section seems a bit speedily written to me, but I do think it's important, and I'm really happy that they gave everyone a little bit more of a bone here to figure out what they're looking for. And also with that much of the space in the personal work written about animation, I would say that means that probably they want to see some animation. So that's my reading between the lines. But G, you have a question?
I mean, you pretty much just answered it actually. I was just gonna ask if you think because of that and because of like how the acceptance rate has been going, I suppose, down each year, if like
Yeah.
now they're kind of expecting you to have that basis in animation a bit more and like wanting to see it in your personal work more. So basically,
Sure.
I was just gonna ask if it's becoming more of a less optional to include animation in your portfolio or not, if I was
That
interpreting that
that's
right.
that's a good observational point. It does seem like animation is creeping into the portfolio. I mean, even like the short animation, the required short animation, only came into the portfolio like I think probably 6 or 7 years ago. It didn't used to be a requirement. So the fact that they brought that in and now they're writing all this extra information about the personal, I think what this basically means on a bigger sort of broader perspective is that they're needing more ways to differentiate people, no, more ways to kind of separate out um, groups, because maybe they are getting a lot of, I mean, this is always the case, right? They get a lot of, they could just get so many portfolios, and so there's only so much room for uniqueness and maneuverability in each of them to kind of have your voice heard. And so my feeling is that they're sort of like, basically it seems like what they want is what CalArts and Goblins and a bunch of other schools are looking for, which is more, less like, hey, do this, and more, here's this general skill set, please just show us what you've got of that. And just like, I mean, I don't know if anyone is also applying to CalArts, but it's a massive portfolio. Same with Goblins. It's more done in like a sketchbook sort of way, but they just want to see tons and tons of work. So like character lineup, like the whole thing is basically a giant personal work portfolio, and they give you some general advice like include some life drawing, things like that. It seems like that is maybe the direction that Sheridan's trying to head in here, and they're trying to give you like more thorough asks for what they're looking for. I guess that's obvious, but yeah, I would say like animation is a great room. Like every time I see anyone's when I'm doing free portfolio assessments, anytime I see someone's animation and it's half decent, I'm like, oh wow, you should do more of that, because that's a thing that much fewer people are competing in that arena, right? There's so many people. Okay, so to contrast that, here's the arena where everyone is competing: character design, the cute little girl arena, the cute witch arena, the there's so many things that I see come up just all the time. Like a cute little bakery as a layout. Sorry if anyone's doing any of these. It doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. It just means that you are competing with a lot of other people with those themes, I guess. There are a lot of people. I've seen a lot of bakeries over the years. So there are some things that I would love everyone to explore more. And honestly, that's what I try to encourage. And if anyone's done any of my world building classes, then you'll know that, because I say I have these very, very specific prompts for the backgrounds and the character, but the backgrounds, I'm trying to kind of push all the sailboats off into different directions so that not everyone is landing at the same spots, because there's only so many cafes that we can have, right? So anyways, there's some questions coming up. So Gyro, let's hear from you.
Hello,
Have
Gar.
you here?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, welcome.
It's so good to see you again.
Good to
I remembered working with you one-on-one
Yeah,
over the summer.
Yeah.
Just wanted to ask a quick um frequently asked question about the portfolio.
sure.
For the figure drawing section, what's some recommended stuff would we use for figure drawing? 'Cause I remember you mentioned about Strathmore, Newsprint, and Conte.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Specific tools. So yeah, I mean, I would I really I kind of understand why Sheridan doesn't really like pencil, because I keep seeing life drawings done in pencil that are just a little bit tighter. They're not nearly as expressive as what I see from people with Conte, even those that kind of hate Conte, which is most of my students probably. They're still getting more expressive drawings with Conte, a fairly unknown medium to them than with pencil. So I do recommend Conte. But if you're feeling like that the sticks are annoying and you don't quite understand that, then switch to a pencil, like a Conte pencil, and don't go any softer than 2B or it's going to break all the time. But 2B is my favorite Conte stick and pencil grade, because I just find the 2B, yeah, it just is soft enough to get a nice soft stroke in your buildup, and then you can also turn it and then get a nice sharp stroke that has a looseness to it that I really like. So yeah, I mean Conte generally, and yes, definitely newsprint. You want to work big enough so that you can really get your whole arm moving. You want to be feeling that gesture, and really like the line of action isn't just a technical like requirement or like a tip. It's also to kind of get your arm moving, to get the flow of the pose, and to kind of like, yeah, give yourself an armature that you can then expand out with other rough strokes to kind of yeah, get a clear sense of the pose. See, this is hard to talk about. It's much easier to do.
No,
But
I know what you're saying.
Right.
What's your go-to size for like the Strathmore newsprint?
Yeah, so I mean 18 by 24 minimum
Mhm.
is it. Well, minimum and pretty much my only one that I use. But I know some people
Right.
love the larger 24 by 36, but I haven't found like a single thing that that can fit on very well. So I mean 18 by 24 is standard, and that's fine. It's just but with the shorter poses, I'll usually put a couple on a page, but horizontally, so that you're getting 24 across. And then when I get to like the threes, because threes you can get a decent drawing, then I turn it back and I just do one per page, and same with fives and tens and longer. So that's what I would do, because some of the 30 seconds and 1 minute and even 2 minutes I find are not worth having a whole page for. So I try to condense it. But Yeah, hope that helps, Gyro. Good question. Good questions generally so far, everyone. G, you have another question. Feel free to raise your hand, anyone. It's a nice feature, so use that.
I think there might be a couple in chat that you haven't gotten to.
Oh,
So I think you should get to those ones first.
sure. Okay, there are some. So, okay, we'll talk about personal works in a minute. So, newsprint, rough or soft. I love soft. I don't want any texture with the newsprint. If you were doing a longer rendering of a drawing, like a nice portrait or something with like full tonal rendering, then sure, use the rough, because that's where that texture helps the rendering, because you can it restricts you from going too dark too fast, basically, when there's texture. But when you're just doing gestures and you don't want to have to be frustrated over like the toothiness of the paper, I find the smoother the better. So I usually go super soft. In fact, for a long time, Sheridan was like the only place that I could find this soft newsprint at. And I began buying like whole containers of this newsprint from Sheridan and bringing it back to Guelph when I graduated, because I just couldn't get it anywhere. I'm sure it exists elsewhere, but yeah, I try to get the smoothest newsprint possible. Also, because you don't want to ever like hit an edge or like be slowed down by the texture. You want to be able to move as fast as you want to move so that it feels fluid and has that kind of animation-y kind of gestural quality to it that you'll see in like the Forrest textbook and in the Michael Hampton textbook on life drawing. Yeah, so okay, that's that one. So what mistakes do you see a lot in personal works? It's funny because the other class, the other Q&A I did last week asked about anime and fan art. The two like things that we do not talk about. And again, I will say this again, but I think that if you have a lot of fan art and you're wondering if you can use it, my question is, why are you concerned about this right now? You have 4 to 5 months left between now and February. You know that fan art is a bad idea. Everyone knows that it's not like the first thing I would gravitate towards. I would gravitate towards making your own content, making your own stories, characters, pitch packages, backgrounds, etc. Because that's what they want you to do. They don't want to hire, or sorry, they don't want to have people attend the college that are just going to be worker drones. Sheridan wants leaders. Sheridan wants directors. They want Domi Shees, that directed Turning Red, was Sheridan's student. Everyone should probably know that. They want people like that are like going to go and grab the industry by the horns and make great stories. So the more leadership that you show in your portfolio is good. That's an unwritten code of this portfolio that they want to see you be an individual. They don't want you to see you be just, you know, replicating content of others. So that's part of why I think fan art is not a great idea. But if you have, if you were asking me in February, you're like, can I include some fan art? I don't have enough personal work, and this is all I got, and I think it's good. If I saw it and I was like, it was really good, I'd be like, okay, sure. That's, you know, good fan art is not the worst. It's just not, it wouldn't be my first pick. But it's not like it's going to absolutely disqualify. You're not going to, you know, grade your point down to 0 for doing fan art. It's just that they would prefer to have the original content. That's all. And anime, this whole like Western versus anime thing, like it's not about one or the other necessarily. There's great anatomically correct anime that is like structural and great, but there's also anime that was designed in a way that was meant to be economical and efficient so that you could duplicate it easily. There was no threat of being off model between animators if there were a change of employees. They made styles that were overly simplified and overly exaggerated, and these kind of more almost graphic kind of extreme emotions. Those things, it was kind of the birth of emojis in a way. Those things are, or those styles are just more symbolic and less representational, right? Does that make, I don't know if that makes sense. If you've read Understanding Comics, then you understand what I mean here. It's a great book talking about this spectrum of realism versus symbolic versus something else in the other corner. And that anime is much more symbolic. Sheridan does not want that. They want structural sense of weight and gravity. They want a round character that feels like they exist in 3D space. They want you to be aware of depth and the ability to draw people and complex objects in perspective. So that, showing this very caricatured sort of symbolic emotions and extreme expressions that are all like the little cat mouth thing. You guys know what I'm talking about, probably. That is just so reused and recycled. Some would call it low bar art, or like it's just very commercial. Sheridan doesn't want that. They want art. They want artistic, creatively decided, intentionally designed things. Same with, I could take the same application and take it out of anime, apply it to natural object drawing. So if you think of like, there's this real popular thing happening right now where like people are simplifying nature. So it's like a little, I don't know, a little dome, and then all the branches kind of go to the edge of that dome, and it keeps this nice graphic shape. That's great, but you don't want to lose the complexity and diversity of the fauna and flora of an environment just so that you can keep this very cute little symbolic simple form, right? It's nice to have graphic design. I don't mean sort of graphic design like layout of pages and stuff. I mean like graphic designed nature. So like a nature that is very simplified and symbolic isn't as valuable as like, design nature, but also that keeps its complexity and diversity. That's great. Anyways, this is way too deep for this question, but anyways, I hope that helps a little bit. So yeah, I mean, other than that, personal works, we already talked about animation. It seems like they're valuing animation more this year than previous years. Could be the case, or it just could be another way they just want to provide more information to let people know. There's so much to say about personal work though, but basically they want to see you be an animator and to be aware of the process that an animation studio goes through. So if you look at any of the art of books, you're going to see exactly what you need to have in your animation portfolio. It's like, look at what is required to work in animation: stories, sketches, characters, backgrounds, objects, props, process work, changes of design, and then eventually landing on a final one. All of this is what they want to see. It's not a secret. It's in every single art of book. That's what your personal work should look like. I mean, obviously not a professional artist that could be hired by DreamWorks tomorrow, but that kind of general idea. They want to see your mind progress through a complex visual design, show that in visual form. You're not there to lead them through it. So adding little written cues occasionally is not a bad idea either. So anyways, a whole bunch of thoughts there. G, let's hear your question now. Thanks for your patience.
You mentioned earlier about niches, and I think particularly in the personal work, what kind of niches do you think aren't very tapped into in a lot of portfolios that you see that you think would like be very valued by professors to see, like stuff that they want to see, or that people don't really have in their portfolio too much? Like
Sure.
just as an example would be like if they prefer to see like, oh, somebody who's really strong in like world building in the sense of like backgrounds compared to all the people competing for characters. Like
Absolutely. That you touched on one right there. That is one for sure. Way less people are competing, well, pretty much for everything except character design. It seems like if I were to just sum up like what I see among my vast like amount of students, it's that pretty much if I was to, okay, let me rephrase this. If I were to look at all of my students' work and guess at what job they're trying to get, not even just the school, just what job they were trying to get, it seems like every single person wants to be a character designer, pretty much. Not everyone. I mean, the vast majority of people seem to want to be character designers based on what their portfolio currently says about them. Whereas there are so many other jobs in animation. Where's all the effects animators? I never see anyone hand animating some cool effects. There's so much stylization that you can add to effects to give it a character, right? Like you might have seen, there's a lot of this actually coming back now. Even the most recent like Need for Speed game has integrated like 2D hand animated effects, which I think is so cool. Like, so, just things like that are not, it's absolutely important and part of a production, but it seems like everyone just wants to do the main character. Everyone wants to be Nico Marley, of How to Train Your Dragon character designer, Kung Fu Panda character designer. There's so many other jobs. Even storyboarding. I'm surprised that storyboarding isn't a more sought after thing, or maybe it's just that it's a new skill and a lot of students are uncomfortable with that, which is absolutely the case. I would say that, but still, like, try some storyboards, learn about filmmaking, learn about directing, learn about cuts and edits and the camera angles and such. Like, that stuff is going to really set you apart. Okay, now let's talk about that question. So I think somebody just joined. We're talking about like how unique niches and underexplored areas that can help your portfolio stand out. One big thing that one of my students here is doing, which I think is great, is having a story or a bit of a theme for your work that is a bit more historical. So something where you have to do a little bit of research to find out the right costume, the right look of vehicles, of buildings, things like that. That is great. Anything that requires research actually is an underdeveloped area, because most students just want to jump straight into drawing, which is why all of my courses try to slow that process down and make you actually do more research and story building and thinking about the psychology of your characters before you get to that point where you're drawing them. Right, that I think is very important, because that is a way to make yourself stand out in a sort of in a subtler way, because it's just like, wow, I guess when I created a lot of these courses, I was thinking like, how can I like inspire people to think of more interesting characters than, yes, just the cute little girl or the cute little witch or something like. There's I see so many of those, so sorry for ragging on those, but I do see them a lot. So I guess part of what I was thinking is like, we need to actually understand our characters more. We need to like understand how they would react in different scenarios, what role of the story they're in. And often here's another funny thing, is that everyone wants to design like the main character of their story, right? If you look at movies, the main character is not always the most interesting looking character. In fact, they're often the most generic looking in many ways, because I think the reason for this is because they need the most amount of people to identify with the main character, because that is the empathy drive. That is the character that is letting all of us empathize with that character of the story, right? So we all need to be able to share in that character's struggle, to be able to be with them on that journey through the story. So which is all great, but it doesn't always make for a very flashy, interesting looking character design. Whereas like think of like Moana versus Maui, for example. Like, Maui is he just, if you saw that in a portfolio, it would just be much more compelling, I guess. So I like to think about like secondary and tertiary characters sometimes of a story, and that's kind of, the mentor, the villain, even a weird uncle or something of the main character. Sometimes that can be a good way to think about it. Now you can still make an interesting looking main character, but you just need to be aware of that you need to like actively really try to make them, a little more compelling than just like Hiccup or something, right? Let's see, did I steer off course there? What were we talking? Oh, just interesting niches. Okay, well, anyways, I think that's a good amount of things. Yeah, just research and like more, I guess more thoughtfulness more towards the vastness of the animation pipeline, storyboarding, effects, different hair varieties, the fashion of your characters, different outfits, things like that are definitely underexplored, which is why I like to emphasize, like, especially lately, I really like seeing like pitch packages, like as if you're pitching to a studio. Here's the characters, here's a bit about the story, here's I don't know, a map, here's vehicle designs, here's what the mountains look like, here's what trees look like. Those things, especially nature and designing nature, is so, I very rarely see that, but it would be great to see more of that, because you can take aspects of your character designs and apply that into each of the different aspects of the world to create a cohesive feel for the whole thing, right? And then we see like, wow, I can see this whole story. Kind of like Klaus. Think about the design of Klaus. It was so fantastic, right? There's like these sharp looking houses for this very sharp mannered people, right? That perfect double motif there, right? And then the light throughout the movie gradually gets warmer as it goes. Like, so you could have some color scripts to show that happening as things start to change in the community. Just like that is golden storytelling. So borrow from those folks that are absolutely doing it right. Okay, Gyro, you have a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on your explanation on the character design thing. I agree with like the whole uh the design of like the characters with that are like that aren't the protagonists, mainly like sidekicks. Because I
Sure.
remember I remember you explaining that to me when we went one-on-one when I was doing the character design. I had multiple designs and I chose the sidekick one, and he was really fun to draw.
Great. Yeah, sometimes I mean, you can have a bit of a more sense of playfulness, I guess, with your characters sometimes if they aren't not the main character. I mean, though there are exceptions to this. Like think about like Despicable Me, for example. Like Gru is obviously not a normal main character, and he's got a great design. So you absolutely can break this. And what I guess I'm compelling you all to break it. Please break the main character trope rule of them looking very general. I mean, especially with a lot of Disney stuff, right? It's like I could almost like copy and paste the characters from one movie to the next, and yeah, let's try to get away from that, right? So yeah, great comment, Gyro. Any other questions out there? Feel free to use the chat. Feel free to raise your hand. Rachel, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. So on the portfolio,
Mhm.
like description, it was talking about how they prefer using like you submitting traditional work. From your experience, like what is your opinion on this?
So this is just for the observational drawing section, first of all. And so there's a couple of little things I want to draw your attention to here. So it says should be, you know, that's an important little piece. I still wouldn't recommend doing digital light drawing or doing digital hand drawing. I absolutely would not recommend that. This said, I have seen people do that very rarely, but they do, and you know, for me personally, I just wouldn't want to risk that. That's for how fussy Sheridan can be. I would never risk that. But I have these couple people that I can bring to mind. One did a digital hand drawing and one did digital both. They both, because it was really good, they did well. So I mean, there are a lot of ways to cover your digital tracks, I suppose you could say, to make it feel traditional. I mean, brushes are like literally incredible these days. So um I don't know. I would still do it traditionally. Also just because you're setting yourself up well, because every year of life drawing is going to be traditionally drawn. Like you're in there's not a screen in the room, except for your phones. So, you know, you're going to be traditionally drawn while you're in the program, which I think is great. So I would do it traditionally. But as for this, like all other sections can be digital. Oh yeah, and then it says, but traditional is preferred. They may say this, but I wouldn't put much in that thought. From what I've seen the past several years, pretty much what everyone is doing is doing their observational traditional and then everything else digital, and it doesn't seem to affect the score one mark either way. So I really don't think it matters. And I think in future I wouldn't be surprised to see that sentence leave. But they do say that, so I should, you know, an element of caution. But from what I've observed from tutoring hundreds of students, I don't think that is worth anything. I think that, you know, digital, especially with your layouts, something as complicated as perspective, especially when you're rotating objects and doing some complex like different levels and stuff like that, it is a real pain to do that traditionally. Like you can do it, but the amount of effort and measuring that it requires sometimes is just wild. So I really do encourage that you do your layouts digitally, and many of you that are my students know why in particular, because I use a plugin that really helps you figure out the complexities of perspective, not in a cheaty sort of AI way, but just in a like, here, we're going to make this faster for you so that you don't have to measure out 18 ellipses just to get like a turned object, something like that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Any other questions? Yeah, Gyro?
So I wanted to ask a question about the storyboard section, because since they do a new prompt every year, I feel like comparing to this to last year, it feels more vague, especially with the word opportunities. If you want, is there any ideas coming up to your head on
Well,
what
if
this
I had
prompt
any,
is?
I would not be able to say a single thing, because otherwise we'd have potentially 14 different versions of that. But or however many
That's
people are
fine.
here. But I mean,
Because I already,
oh,
yeah, I already got an idea to mine. I'm already working
great.
on my storyboard section, but
Okay. I mean,
yeah.
what I would say is just that it is quite open to interpretation, and really it always has been. Like, I've seen some that I look at the prompt and I'm just like, huh. And yeah, I don't quite see the connection, but and they don't seem to mind as long as it's well done. You'll notice that this is actually a trend with Sheridan. As long as it's really well done, they don't really care what their own requirements are. Now, that doesn't say I'm not telling you to be super risky with the requirements and still absolutely follow this to the best extent you can. But really, the biggest thing to worry about is it good? Is it good is the first and last question of the marking for this portfolio. And so yeah, don't do a 10-second short animation. I'm not saying to be risky like that, but to maybe, if you want to add a second, it's not going to be the end of the world. You're not going to get disqualified. You're just gonna, if it's good, it's great. That's what they mark on. So I mean, use this loosely. But what this tells me is that we want to see a fairly willful fox. We want to see a fox that is going to make something happen and doesn't really care what, who's giving them permission or not. You could use that to a funny extent. For example, maybe everyone's trying to stop the fox from doing something, and he's not noticing that everyone's trying to stop him, and he's like, I think this is the button I need to press. That could be an interpretation of that theme. That's a very loose interpretation. You could, I see there were a couple of years where actually I saw a lot of like it was the possum. The possum was like stealing jewels from a museum or something. I don't know, but that would also work for this. Like if the theft, like maybe the fox is trying to steal this like jewel. That is obviously that would follow this. Like you have to kind of seize the day, take your fate into your own hands. That kind of idea is what we want to see of the fox. But how you get there, whether it's a positive or negative outcome, that is not said there, right? It is vague. You're right, Gyro. Like it doesn't spell it all out. This is just a little thing to get you going. It's just so that because it's the same thing that I talked earlier about my background design prompts. It's the same idea. If we give prompts that are a little bit more specific, what I've noticed is that it helps my students land in a better spot, because it's not just like, draw me a background. It's like, well, a little bit of constraints are very good for us. Like if we have a little bit of a cage or a sense of what the arena is that we're talking about, then we can flex our artistic muscles. But if it's vague and open-ended, like I've had clients like this too that are like, just draw me something, and you'll notice that those are not good clients to work for. They are always the ones that say that they have no opinion, or they just do what you want, until you start giving them some options, and then suddenly they have lots of opinions about how it should go. So a better client would be like, here is the general idea, here's what the mood and the expression we want to get, but how you get there is we're hiring you to be the artist to do that. That's what you do. We're not going to tell you how to do it. This is just where we want to end up. This is the goal. That's a good scenario. So that's why they give you a prompt like this. It's just to spur you along. So I hope that helps a bit. Danielle, you have a question.
Hey, sorry, I have two questions. One
Sure.
is a really quick one, and it's very specific. Would you do a walking cycle in the animation portion? with the walkie-talkie? Or would that?
Oh, I thought you meant for personal work for the walkie-talkie. Um, I I guess you could. It's not a an object or thing that especially lends itself to that. Like a jump or a bounce or an impact of some kind is a little bit easier. I suppose you could try it. I mean, I would love to see that in one of our sessions, but yeah, I don't know if you could do it the right way, maybe, but yeah, something simpler might be a little bit more beneficial, to be honest. But anyways, your second question.
Okay, so the second portion is actually in regards to storyboard. It was just kind of came to me as you were talking. Could you use, or is it not recommended to use like common stories that people would know, or like themes of stories that people would know, and kind of work them into your storyboard with the fox? Like not my example, but what I'm going to say is like, Sleeping Beauty eats the apple and falls asleep and is awoken by a prince. Like that's a very common theme that people would
Yeah.
know what you reference.
Sure.
But could you make the stories like similar to that and kind of put that character in it, or do they want like a brand new one? Is it not?
No, that's fun. Like, I mean, that's kind of what Disney's bread and butter is, right? They always take old fairy tales and folk tales and kind of jazz it up themselves. No, that's a fine idea. Like okay, let's just go with that for a second. So you could have the fox seeing an apple in this tree, and maybe it sees like it looks very dangerous, or there's signs that say like this apple's poisonous or something, or like or stay back, like no foxes beyond this point, whatever you're going to say. No, don't use excessive use of signs though.
No.
So but in this example, let's go with it. So you have all this visual communication that says like don't go here, and then but we see this beautiful apple, then we could be like, no, the fox is going to do it and he's going to take that apple, and then that's when the snake bites him, so sure, yeah, you could absolutely use one of those story archetypes, I guess you could say. That's really not a bad idea. Yeah, go for it. I think we had another question, but I don't know. Oh, Gyro. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry for asking a lot of questions.
That's okay.
Because yeah, regarding for the animation with the is it the walkie-talkie this year?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I read the documentation and they mentioned that we can also animate this in a different medium as if we please.
Yeah.
Like like are we allowed to animate this in 3D? Like I know we would
Absolutely.
have to like do the extra stuff such as like modeling and rigging, etc. But like uh since I was like binging other Sheridan portfolios on YouTube, I've only seen like one other portfolio that uses 3D for their for their
Yeah.
portfolio.
Sorry, I'm trying to find this example of exactly what you're talking about.
I feel like I feel like I've seen it before. It's just this one portfolio.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, here it. Oh no. Here it is. So this was a past student of mine that, oh great, here's a nice Canadian Tire ad, everyone.
Oh, is that Max's portfolio?
Oh wow, there's two ads. Brutal. I have an ad blocker, but YouTube no longer allows that. So okay, I'll just show you because he did it. This was years ago. This was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and he did a 3D short animation, and it was really well done, and he got 100% on it. Sorry, I'm just trying to scan through and find where. Here it is. So let's just look at this for a moment. So I don't know if this is going to be totally live for everyone here, but there's this wonderful curiosity it expresses, and then this quick little back step, and then it kind of jumps, and it has this wonderful bounce to it, and it just totally blew me away, and clearly blew Sheridan away. So absolutely, you can do this. It's probably a harder way to do it, I would say. I've seen a lot of people get 15 out of 15 with much less effort, I suppose, by doing it in 2D. I had one student last year for the first time do it in stop motion, which was really cool. So, I mean, absolutely, but it's not, don't go out of your way to be like, look how unique I am. I mean, okay, but I'm saying the opposite of that in other scenarios. So okay. It's just, you don't need to doll up the animation. This is the same thing that they're saying with the personal work, right? Like you don't necessarily need to make the animation better than just like a well animated thing. If you have a well animated thing, then that's probably going to be a 15 out of 15. So yeah. But yes, absolutely you can is the short answer. So yeah. Anyways, Aaliyah, you have a question.
Yeah, so this might be a question everyone knows already, but I was just wondering, is it like there's no prompt for the animation of the walkie-talkie, yeah? Like it's just do
No.
whatever you can in the 2 seconds.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. I mean, and also more revealing than that is actually looking at the marking sheet. If you look at what they're always marking in the short animation, it's just like it's more of a technical exercise. Like they want to see that you're using the principles of animation, squash and stretch, follow through, anticipation, things like that. They want you to be using those principles. So that's why I usually like I'm all for like really going for it with all of your other work. But with the short animation, I'm like, just do a good animation. Just like you don't have to think about the most clever thing in the world. Like just doing a really good jump or jumping off of something, landing on something else. You could use a little antenna. Some people use that as an arm. Some people use it as like a bouncing mechanism. Okay, I'll tell you the most clever animation that I saw last year. It was one of my wonderful students. I think they're from Trinidad and Tobago, and they did it was the juice box, right? So there's the straw and then just a little juice box, super basic. And you have the straw, so it's like okay, you can do some cool things with the straw. But they had the juice box tied down to a railroad track, and a train was coming. And then they had to they couldn't get out of this tie because they were tied down, and so they squeezed themselves, and all the juice shot out of the straw, and then they escaped from their bondage right before the train comes. That was absolutely crazy. But I mean, I don't think that a good story like that, it's almost not worth doing it for the short animation. If you're gonna have a cool idea like that, do it for your personal work. Do it for your demo reel. Don't do it for the short animation. Do just like a very beautiful, simple jump, or maybe you could do something fun like the walkie-talkie steps out, and then something comes and hits them, and I did have a very clever walkie-talkie one the other year actually, and it was 1 second. I just want to get this over here for a second. It was so good. I still have this student's work. And it was colored. I mean, you really don't have to do that, but here it is. So this person did like this whole background. Oh no, where's the video? Oh, here it is. So here's the walkie-talkie. So it sees this phone, and it's like this sleek, curvy looking phone. And so this walkie-talkie is all like, I don't know. He's like, ooh, look at that phone over there. And so he wags his little antenna and then does this little jump, and he does a flip. And then, I mean, this is way longer than 4 seconds too. Like, well, it says that it's not, but it is. I know that it's like a little bit more than 96 frames. But yeah, so very, very clever, right? Like that's just a funny idea. Even if you took out the background and removed all the color and just had the foreground and this counter, it would still be really fun. So, I mean, you could definitely do a fun prompt like that if you wanted to, but if you can't think of anything, just make a good, simple, clear animation and don't overthink the short animation. I've seen a lot of people do very well on it. It seems like they're not extremely harsh with that one. Anyways, any other questions? I got to wrap up very soon, but maybe one more question if there are any. Oh, Rachel, you got it. Last question.
So, for which part of the portfolio would you say that the harshest marking on?
Yeah, probably storyboarding. It just seems like, where is it? Well, I mean, there's also the most room for error just by the sheer amount of marks that they're trying to give you. But also like look at the description for it. I'll be honest, as a portfolio tutor, I also find it the most difficult to predict how they're going to mark a storyboard. yeah, year after year. I mean, I could give you framing advice and compositional advice and like how to let's tell this story more clearly. That's what I'm always trying to do. But sometimes like storyboards that I think are great are not scored well, and then sometimes that I see storyboards that are graded very highly are not very scored well. So I don't know. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good portfolio reviewer. Hopefully some of my students here can pipe up there. But I find that them very spotty about marking this. And it seems inconsistent year after year. It seems like some things like I don't know, especially last year. I was really shaken last year by some of my students that I thought had absolutely wonderful storyboards, and they did like me. They still did really well, but you needed to be like pretty much a perfect student last year. So they still get like 85, 90%, but you need to get like 91, 95. So I find that difficult. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, the storyboard, there are some concrete things that you can follow to make sure that you get a good mark, but there is a lot that seems to be just like to the whim of that individual person that's marking your portfolio. I mean that's this process generally, isn't it? At least with life drawing though, there seems to be some things that they do like clarity, like weight and believability of gravity and motion, things like that. Building up some kind of understructure so you're not just drawing the contour of the form. Yeah, things like that are more predictable. But the storyboard, I mean, one big thing that you can use to really ensure you do well is a variety of shots, obviously, and really staying on model, but having a bit of flex with that, making the character do more expressions, more emotions than they've given you in the very, very brief character. Here he is. Like they don't give you a lot. They give you a front and a side view, right? What does a back 3/4 view look like? What do you do with that fluff that comes out? You will probably have to face these questions. A low angle and high angle shot. How do you make a high angle shot of this fox not just be like a head with tiny little feet poking out, considering how big his head is? Things like that are challenging. So shooting the fox in particular ways to minimize the awkwardness that's something that I can absolutely help with. So but yeah, good questions, everyone. This is great. So I will post this one on YouTube. There was actually great questions tonight. So this one's going to go up on the Animation Tutors YouTube. And also for the folks that want to do the giveaway, there's a book giveaway. Is this it? So here's the link. We're doing this new fun thing. Hopefully it's fun. I'm just going to post this in the chat here for everyone, or you can just see the thing. So sign up for our animation quest. It's totally free. It's basically just like sort of like a rewards program where we're going to have certain tasks every month for you to do. And if you do them, then you can get a certain percentage off of either our courses, mentorships, or things from our brand new shop that isn't really finished yet, but here it is anyways. Like art supplies, textbooks, etc. So it's just a fun way to kind of reward people that want to help us reach more students, basically. So yeah, register for that, and that will enter you into the book giveaway for the Anatomy Life Drawing book. Some of you are in the bundle and you probably already have this book, but anyways, yeah. So thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, I hope this helps.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you,
Thanks for coming,
guys.
Leah. You
Thank
too,
you, guys.
Gyro. Great to see so many familiar faces here and voices. All right. Take care, everyone. See ya.